Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Cordant, and today we're going to be taking a look at Rogue Trader's second expansion, Lex Imperialis. I want to start by apologizing, my voice is a little bit messed up, but hopefully it will not be too much of a problem. Owlcat Games provided me with an early access review key for this DLC, so that I could take a look at the upcoming changes and prepare this type of content. And as such, the purpose of this video is to share information with you all, in case you are interested in seeing what this new expansion brings to the table. I will start by making a disclaimer. I have not done a full playthrough of the game with the DLC installed. It's a very long game, it takes a long time, I just did not have the time to do it. So I cannot account for the entirety of the changes that this DLC adds. What I did do was, I looked over some of the new tools of war that the game will now include, the new Archetype, new Origin, new Companion, and also looked at some of the fights via some provided save files, because Owlcat Games also provided a couple of save files at different stages in the campaign, so that we can explore a little bit more of these changes that were added. With that in mind, let's look at the trailer here and see what we can get as a preview. We can see the new doggy companion. We can see the new shields. We did not have shields before, now we do. The new companion. The new archetype of the overseer. That's the archetype that brings in the animal companions. The new tools of war. So now we have shields. We have new shotguns and some more abilities for shotguns, I think also for power mauls. We get new locations because we're going to have new quest lines and areas to explore. Face the Emperor's Justice. I don't actually know what this is, but I am excited for it. And there we are. So let's also see what they have to say about the expansion here. Lex Imperialis is the second story expansion for Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, providing an additional 15 hours of thrilling narrative-driven gameplay that explores the ironclad rule of Imperial law and introduces an entirely new faction, the Adeptus Arbitratus. Unravel the dark secrets of House von Valancius as you navigate the perilous web of justice, duty and betrayal on a quest that will alter the destiny of the entire Chronos Expanse. So, I think it's a fair amount of extra content for an expansion pack, 15 hours. Just so you can have some idea, if you've played Void Shadows, it should be about the same thing. So if you know the scope of what was added with Void Shadows, you can expect something similar with Lex Imperialis. A gripping new story, immerse yourself in a tense narrative where your choices as judge and judge ripple throughout the Imperium. I wonder if this is what they were talking about in the video about facing the Emperor's Justice. Delve into the intricate process of the Grand Harvesting and experience firsthand the grim responsibility of collecting the Imperial Tithe, and the severe consequences await those who interfere with this sacred duty. Dynamic new mechanics, embrace tactical innovation with an all-new set of familiars, and bring fresh strategy to combat challenges. So this is one of the main changes. Command the majestic cybernetic eagle, so yeah, not just the doggy, a living embodiment of the Aquila, while your companion directs his powerful Cyber-Mastiff. These battle companions dramatically reshaping combat encounters, requiring the use of inventive tactics while delivering thrilling, unpredictable outcomes. So to mention, they refer here the Cybernetic Eagle and the Cyber-Mastiff, but you actually also have a Cyber-Raven and also a Swarm animal companion. An uncompromising new companion, meet Solomorn Antar, a seasoned Arbitrator officer whose unwavering dedication to Imperial justice is matched only by a simmering anger and hatred of criminals. Accompanied by his loyal Cyber-Mastiff, this fierce Arbitrator offers players not only formidable combat skills, but also a deeply personal romance and a troubled past to uncover. So, some things to mention here. You get a new companion, obviously, which is cool. You get another quest line, because every companion has its own quest line to explore, which will also bring its own new areas to look at. You have romance, if you like that kind of thing. But also very important here is, if you want to explore the new stuff that this DLC brings, but you didn't really want to make a main character for that purpose, this new companion actually brings most of the new stuff. So he's built using the new Origin, he has the new archetype of the Overseer. He has an animal companion with the Cyber-Mastiff, so you can actually explore a lot of what the DLC adds just by playing with this companion. The Adeptus Arbitratus revealed face the unyielding guardians of Imperial law. These incorruptible enforcers arrive equipped with signature weaponry, shotguns, suppression shields, and power mauls to redefine battlefield dynamics and tactical gameplay, embodying both their elite status and their relentless pursuit of order. So mainly just saying, we're gonna have some more emphasis on shotguns, some more options to play with them. We're now gonna have shields, which we did not have before, and we're also gonna have some new power mauls, which is actually a weapon type that I did like, but there was not a lot of variety on that front there. So yeah, we're gonna explore all of these in detail throughout the course of this video. And at the end, I will also share my thoughts about, you know, what I think about this DLC, if I find it to be worthwhile getting or not. Obviously, it's gonna be a personal opinion, but still, it might help some people. One more thing to add. If you do enjoy what you see regarding Lex Imperialis and you decide to buy this DLC for your Rogue Trader game, I am going to include an affiliate link in the description of the video. So if you want to support the channel, if you buy the game through that link, it will be the same price. I get a small commission. With that said, let's see what we get when we start a new game. In terms of difficulty screen, I don't believe anything changed here. I think everything is the same on this screen. Let's go for a custom character. We did get some new portraits here. I think it's only these two. The first one looks like an Overseer commanding his animal companion, and the second one is somebody, you know, showing off the new shield and the power maul. Home worlds are the same. Nothing changed over here. But in the Origins is where we get our first main big difference here. So initially we only had from the Astra Militarum Commander all the way up to Sanctioned Psyker in the base game. Now we're also going to have the Arbitrator. Now something to note about the Arbitrator, because you might find it weird, all of the Origins are going to have a feature and a couple of modifiers and also some talents, right? But nothing else other than that. The Psyker was the only one up to now that had its own tab, where you then could specialize if you want to be a Biomancer, Diviner, blah blah blah, which was quite unique. And the Arbitrator does something similar. You will also have your own tab here for the Arbitrator, where you can specialize in one of 3 gameplay styles. We're going to look at these in a second. So for the Origin, you will notice we have no features here. The features will only come when you actually choose a specialization. Let's just see what they have to say. The Adeptus Arbitratus are the implacable and unbribable keepers of the Lex Imperialis, the sole and sacred law of the Imperium. They exact a merciless and terrifying punishment upon any who dare violate the sacred tithe, the tribute every Imperium world must pay in the name of its continued existence. For talents, we have a lot of talents. We have Shotgun Mastery. You can now wield two-hand shotguns in one hand, particularly useful if you want to dual wield or if you want to use a shield as well. Lawful Intervention. You can parry incoming attacks with a ranged weapon. I do think we have something similar in a common talent, but we also have this one here from the Arbitrator Origin. Armor Piercing. When you attack, you are going to reduce the enemy's armor for 1 round. Law and Order. Your attacks made on others' turns deal more damage, and the target of such an attack must pass a willpower test or become immobilized for 1 round. Now to note, I do believe others' turns does not include extra turns given to the Arbitrator. What this means is something like attacks of opportunity during an enemy's turn or during an ally's turn. And we do have other things to interact with this and synergize. Arbitrator's Physical Training. You gain toughness equal to half your equipped shield block. Pacification Procedures. Once per turn, you can throw a grenade that does not deal damage on impact. That action costs 0 AP and does not count toward the attack limit per turn. This is pretty cool. We have a lot of grenades in this game that do not deal damage but apply some kind of debilitating effect, and being able to throw those for free is gonna be quite nice, especially if you couple this with an Arch Militant, which builds versatility stacks per attack, and throwing a grenade does count for that. It would just be an additional versatility stack every turn for free. Quite nice. It's also another incentive to use grenades, because personally I don't use them. I don't like to spend my resources. I know it's a problem, but yeah, this just incentivizes you to use them. Public sentencing. Whenever an enemy adjacent to the Arbitrator fails a willpower resistance test from anybody, not necessarily his own, for the first time in a round, that enemy provokes an attack of opportunity from the Arbitrator. So again, it synergizes with this one here of Law and Order. If multiple enemies fail the test at the same time, attack of opportunity is triggered against one of them randomly. Mob Justice. Allies in a 3-cell radius around the Arbitrator to deal more damage. Sure. Prepared Prosecution. During tactical phase, Arbitrator can be placed in a cell adjacent to an enemy. So by default, any other origin or archetype, you cannot place a character adjacent to an enemy. There's always at least one red square in an area adjacent to enemies. The Arbitrator can bypass that. You can put them right next to an enemy. Again, I think to make work something like Law and Order for more attacks of opportunity and just keep pressure on the enemies in case they want to run away from you. Binding Purpose. As long as you have more than 90% wounds, you are immune to blind, disturbed, fatigued, perplexed, slowed, and staggered. So this is a very cool defensive trait, and there's a couple of things here that might not be too obvious. So the first one is you might think that this is not very good because you need to be above 90% wounds, and pretty much anything in the game that hits you is going to deal more than 10% of your HP, especially on higher difficulties. But in case you are not familiar with this game too much, you have something called temporary wounds, which is essentially an additional HP or wound buffer that goes on top of your actual real wound bar. So if you get damaged, your temporary wounds go down before your actual wounds go down. So if you can make use of and leverage temporary wounds, which typically around mid-game you start to be able to do it quite well, you can keep this up for the entire combat, making it a very powerful effect. The other cool thing about this that might not be obvious is, during the course of the game when you're exploring, just out of combat, you have to deal with certain skill checks. They might be traps, they might be trying to interpret some kind of painting on a wall, whatever. And if you fail those checks, sometimes you get a negative effect. Like you can become fatigued, like from an athletics check. You can become staggered or perplexed. So by having this, you're basically immune to those effects in case you fail those skill checks. It's not a major thing, but it's a useful thing. Pillar of the Law. After the Arbitrator uses Heroic Act or Desperate Measure, basically their ultimates, they gain a bonus to Coercion, and Coercion is very important for Arbitrators. We're going to see that in a bit. And we're also going to get a Willpower bonus % block until the end of combat. And finally, Steady Hand of Justice. With a one-handed Shock Baton or a one-handed Power Maul equipped, the Arbitrator gains 10% bonus to parry and reduces the weapon skill of enemies hit with this weapon by 10 until the end of combat. This weapon also deals an additional 25% more critical damage. So all we see here is trying to make you experiment with the new stuff that the DLC brings, because we're going to have more focus on shotguns, and you have a talent here for that. We're going to have shields. We now have a couple of talents which interact with the shields. And we're also going to have some new power mauls, which again, this is incentivizing. And notice, it's one-handed shock batons or power mauls, which kind of makes you think that on the other hand, you could be using a shield as well. Okay, let's now go for the Arbitrator tab here. We have 3 specializations available. Each of them is going to provide a different type of gameplay. We have Vigilant, Castigator, and Subductor. And here you can see each of these are going to have their own features and characteristic modifiers. Let's start with the Vigilant one. For every target there is a bullet. Your former squad was responsible for eradicating heretics who had defied Lex Imperialis. You learn to utilize different ammo types to best suit a given situation or take down a specific enemy. By choosing your arsenal wisely and targeting the leaders of the resistance, you always completed your objective in the God Emperor's name. This is just flavor text, but I think it's fun to read. Now, the features are what, in my opinion, are going to define the gameplay of the specializations. In this one we have Swift Justice. Enemies attacked by the Arbitrator or their familiar, so it's kind of also wanting you to use a familiar, suffer the Swift Justice effect until the start of Arbitrator's next turn. And what does this do? The Arbitrator's shotgun attacks deal an additional 40 plus coercion-based more damage to those enemies. So again, coercion is the main characteristic, I think, for Arbitrators. And this one is pushing you into using shotguns. Fulminating Shot. This shotgun attack reduces the dodge, parry and block of targets in its area of effect by coercion-based percentage for 1 round, regardless of whether they were hit or not. Damage from this attack is reduced by half, just to balance it out so you can have this debuff not be too powerful. So yeah, both features are making you want to use shotguns. So this would be the ranged type of Arbitrator choice. For the characteristic modifiers, you also have ballistic skill and perception, which makes sense for using ranged weapons. You get coercion and Lord Imperium. And finally, you also get 2 new abilities. Grizzly Adjudication. This shotgun attack has plus shotgun armor penetration percentage, additional armor penetration, and inflicts shotgun maximum damage levels of bleeding on targets hit. Just making shotguns more powerful, more fun to use, and also more versatile by also applying bleed. And then you also have Double Slug. This shotgun attack allows Arbitrator to make 2 single shot attacks against a target. So typically if you shoot a shotgun, it's an AoE cone effect attack, right? You don't have single target shots. With Double Slug, you have just that. So basically you sacrifice the area of effect, but you focus on getting more concentrated damage by having 2 single shots, single target attacks against a given target. So yeah, this is clearly a ranged variant of the Arbitrator, and in my opinion this would be like a perfect fit for a soldier archetype. You can play it with whatever you want, of course, but if I were to play this, I would play it with a soldier. Moving on to Castigator. An Arbitrator's order is the voice of Lex Imperialis. Your squad was in charge of collecting the secret tithe from debtors and suppressing any resistance shown. Your commands bellow with unshakable confidence honed by years of service, making allies and defenders alike comply, for none dare protest when you give voice to your will. Hundreds of criminals have fallen to their knees and begged for mercy upon hearing your deafening order to surrender. All of them faced swift and harsh judgment. So this one is kind of pointing towards somebody commanding your allies. And we're going to see how that plays out here. We get death sentence as a feature. You inflict coercion-based stacks of the death sentence effect on an enemy. Death sentence, each stack increases the enemy's critical chance to be critically hit by 1% and reduces their perception and willpower by -2. This is quite strong, I think. You can get a lot of coercion in this game, so you can apply a lot of stacks to an enemy, which can give a very, very nasty penalty. Also, whenever a target under this effect suffers damage from an attack, any attack, not just yours, it suffers 1 more stack of death sentence. This will last until the start of the Arbitrator's next turn. So, I think this is quite powerful because, like I said, you can get your coercion to be quite high. You even have some bonuses from the Arbitrator which can give you extra coercion, which can apply some very nasty penalties right from the start to perception and willpower. But what makes this really good, in my opinion, is that you already have from other archetypes, like for example the Psyker or your Navigator, you have some extremely powerful debuffs which also target perception and willpower. So if you can stack those, you can make your enemies very, very soft against certain things that your party can do. So it's a very powerful effect, this one here. 1 AP only, quite good. Then you also have Castigated. Enemies hit by the Arbitrator or the Familiar deal coercion-based less damage for 1 round. So this is someone that's basically applying debuffs to your enemies. You also get your modifiers to Fellowship and Willpower, which again seems to focus more on commanding traits or spellcasting traits, not necessarily combat traits. So this is somebody I would see as playing with an Officer archetype or with an Operative archetype. You also get abilities. That's an order. You choose a cell within a 6-cell radius. All enemies within a 3-cell radius around the Arbitrator must make a willpower resistance test with a coercion-based penalty. On a failed test, if possible, they immediately move to designated cell. In Rogue Trader, one of the most powerful effects you can get in the game is forced movement. If you can force your enemies to move to where you want them to go, it's a massive advantage for you and your party. You can take them out of cover, you can make them proc attacks of opportunity, you can stack them up for a multitude of super powerful attacks like burst attacks, which can do a lot of damage in an area, a shotgun blast, which kills a lot of people in an area, massive AoE spells, grenades. It's just very, very powerful. If you've played with Cassia or a Navigator in this game and you've played with Notch of Purpose or Point of Curiosity, you will know how powerful those effects are. So having an additional tool to do just that is quite good. You also have, in the name of Lex Imperialis, for 1 round the Arbitrator and their allies gain immunity to the prone, stunned, immobilized and counter-attack effects, as well as to all types of forced movement. Enemies must pass a willpower resistance test with a coercion-based penalty or become immobilized until the Arbitrator's next turn. I don't know how good this is, and the reason for it is, it doesn't say how much this costs, it doesn't say the area of effect, so I don't really know how good this is. The effect is very good, but it depends on how you can use it. That will determine if it's good or not. And finally, we have the Subductor. The shield of the Arbitrator separates the law from the lawless and the truth from the detestable lie. Before your ascension, you were part of a squad tasked with keeping crowds from rioting and dangerous criminals from escaping. As long as you have your shield, you are prepared to face any threat and push it back outside the perimeter. So obviously this one is, indicating or hinting that you would want to build a character with a shield. More like a melee type of character that's going to be tanking. Your features are Ruthless Suppression. If there are 2 or more enemies in a 2-cell radius around the Arbitrator, no critical hits can be scored against him or their familiar, and the Arbitrator and their familiar's critical hit chance is increased by coercion-based percentage. Whenever an enemy adjacent to the Arbitrator gets up from being prone, that enemy provokes an attack opportunity from the Arbitrator. Again, this synergizes with the other one we had over there to deal extra damage on other people's turns. And a lot of stuff that's working with attacks of opportunity here. So this one, of course, like it says, shields, incentivizes you to be surrounded and in melee. Yeah, so you want to be a physical character for this, I think. You also have Assault Onslaught. You dash through allies and enemies in a straight line for up to 5 cells without provoking attacks of opportunity. Each enemy on their way must pass an agility resistance test or fall prone until the start of that enemy's next turn. This ability can only be used with a shield equipped. So yeah, needs a shield, proning enemies, which will also work with when they get up from prone, attack of opportunity, so it all comes together quite well. You get weapon skill and toughness, which is perfect for a melee character, and on this one you get no additional abilities. So for me, this would be someone like a warrior type of archetype. That's what I would build him as. And that's it for our Origin and the Arbitrator. We have ranged one, we have a commanding one, and we have a melee one. Triumph, same thing. Darkest Hour, same thing. And now we go for the archetypes. And this is where we're going to get our other main addition from this DLC, the Overseer archetype. Now, this archetype, notably, is a 2nd tier archetype. So if you were hoping to play the game from the start with the new archetype, you cannot do it. You're going to have to wait until level 16, where you can take your 2nd tier archetype here. Now, something very unique before we actually look at the Overseer here is that this archetype is the only one, except Exemplar, is the only one in Tier 2 that you can choose from any of the first tier archetypes. So if you want to play with any of these and still become an Overseer, you can do it. So essentially, you can take any of these archetypes and you can still play with the Overseer 3, and you can also have an animal companion if you choose to do so. Let's actually look now a little bit at the Overseer and what it does. So, to start, the Overseer is a tactical expert who uses their familiar to execute their will. The selection of familiar determines the Overseer's combat style. Different familiars grant them unique capabilities, from healing and protecting allies to destroying enemies with deadly precision. Together, the Overseer and their familiar can dominate any battlefield thanks to their keen adaptability. The core focus is on familiar selection, familiar control, adaptability, support, and focused attacks. So, as I mentioned before, we get the choice of 4 unique animal companions. We have the Cyber-Mastiff, the Cyber-Raven, the Servo-Skull Swarm, and we also have the Cyber-Eagle proficiency. Now, I think they all say the same thing here. Yeah, pretty much. Okay? And each of them is also going to have their own ultimate abilities. We're going to look at those in a bit, not to overload everything right now. Characteristic focus is on fellowship, intelligence, and perception. Now, let me see if I can show what I want to see here. Yeah. So, something very important if you want to play around with the Overseer and you want to play around with familiars is they have restrictions. So, if you want to play with the Cyber-Eagle, you need to be an operative or an officer. If you want to play with the Cyber-Mastiff, you need to be an arbitrator. So this one is the more... I know there's a word for this, but I'm forgetting the word right now. But this one is the one that works for any of the archetypes. If you want to play with an animal companion, you just need to make sure that you have arbitrator as an origin. The Cyber-Raven, you require to be a psychic. You can be unsanctioned or sanctioned. And the Servo-Skull Swarm requires to be an officer or an operative. So yeah, the Cyber-Mastiff is the one that's more general purpose. The one thing I'm kind of curious about is what would happen if I picked an archetype, like let's say a warrior, that does not have the Arbitrator Origin. Can I still pick the Overseer? I don't actually know. I might investigate and get that information into the video here in a bit. I'll try to see how that works. But yeah, right now, I don't see a way for that to make a lot of sense. Okay, so these familiars are going to be a big part of this DLC. So let's actually go over each of them and see how they work. So starting with the Cyber-Eagle, as I mentioned, you need to be an operative or an officer to have this animal companion. The Cyber-Eagle has 3 unique abilities. You cannot actually see what they do here, but hopefully I can be able to show them in a little bit once we actually go into a combat sequence. We can look at Soar. At the end of the Overseer's turn, the Cyber-Eagle soars high above the battlefield. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. So basically the Eagle is kind of soaring high above. The enemies cannot actually target it, and you can set up attacks from a safe position. The Cyber-Eagle is an agile instrument perfectly suitable to oversee the battlefield from above and disorient enemies. While soaring, it gains access to alternative, more powerful versions of its abilities. The Obstruct Vision ability will cause enemies to destroy each other with their own weapons. The evasive obstructed Cyber-Eagle provokes the enemy, causing it to shoot in its direction, with an increased chance to hit that enemy's allies. So you basically taunt the enemy into shooting you, and you kind of position the Eagle where he would target his own allies, dealing damage to them that way. If enemies are tightly grouped, Blinding Strike can significantly limit their capabilities. Strafe will also help Cyber-Eagle navigate through enemy lines while also dealing damage. It's basically like a line movement attack, which deals damage to everybody in the line. And lastly, Live Bait will turn the familiar into a merciless predator. If you do not want to control him directly, just let it soar. It will regain its wounds and wait for the right moment to strike. So yeah, you can have him in a safe position just healing, and then you can command him whenever you want. For the Cyber-Mastiff, you need to be an Arbitrator. On this one, we can actually see what it does. So we have Apprehend. The Overseer chooses an enemy in their line of sight. The Cyber-Mastiff immediately attempts to run to that enemy. If it does not have enough movement points, it moves as close to that enemy as possible. Upon reaching the designated target, the Cyber-Mastiff makes a melee attack, dealing extra 50% damage and inflicting the Apprehended effect, which lasts as long as the enemy and Cyber-Mastiff are adjacent to each other or until another order is given. What Apprehend does is, whenever the Overseer makes a successful attack against this creature, the Apprehending Cyber-Mastiff makes a free melee attack against it, dealing 50% less damage. But it's essentially free additional attacks every time the Overseer attacks the apprehended enemy. If the creature tries to move away from the Mastiff will gain a percentage chance to cancel that creature's movement. If the creature does move and moves further than one cell away from the Mastiff follows, spending 0 movement points and also attacks it. So basically it's going to be on top of that enemy, constantly keeping pressure on the enemy and giving you extra free attacks while doing so as well. Quite cool. You can also use this multiple times per turn, but each time you use it in a round is going to cost you an additional 1 AP. Now, conversely, you also have Protect. It's kind of like the opposite of Apprehend. The Overseer chooses an ally in the line of sight, can be themselves. The Cyber-Mastiff immediately attempts to run to that ally. If it does not have enough movement points, it moves as close as it can. Upon reaching them, the Cyber-Mastiff applies Protected to them and makes a melee area attack against adjacent enemies. The Protected effect lasts until Cyber-Mastiff or target its allies' wounds drop to 0 or until another order is given. When used on the Overseer for the first time in combat, the Overseer regains 1 AP. So basically the first time is free. Protected. Whenever an enemy hits this character, the protecting Cyber-Mastiff makes a free melee attack against the attacker, if possible, dealing 50% less damage. So again, extra free attacks if the protected target gets attacked. Or actually gets hit, sorry. To make the attack, it can move to any cell adjacent to this character, spending 0 MP. If the character moves, the protecting Cyber-Mastiff follows them during the character's turn, spending 0 MP. So it will keep the protected target safe, and it will accompany him until you give an extra order or the protected target dies. And finally, you also have Battle Mode Standby. You order your doggy to fight autonomously. It gains the Battle Mode Standby effect until the end of combat or until a new order is given. And what this does is, the Mastiff will fight independently and cannot be controlled directly. During its turn, it always moves to the closest enemy and attacks them. So it's like a... If you don't want to bother controlling it, you can just let him go and he will do his own thing. And that's that. Looking at the description. The Cyber-Mastiff is a tough and powerful familiar. Its main purpose is to follow designated target, be it ally or foe. The Apprehend ability allows you to chase and isolate enemies. It is especially efficient against targets using ranged weapons and psychers. Yep, because they trigger attacks of opportunity if they are using a ranged weapon in melee. While the Mastiff is adjacent to the apprehended target, it will attack it each time the Overseer attacks that target. If the target decides to flee, the Cyber-Mastiff will try to stop it. Once the target is defeated, do not forget to give your Mastiff a new order, it will be waiting. The Protect ability turns Cyber-Mastiff into a dependable bodyguard. It will follow the protected ally and strike anyone who dares to hit them. If you do not want to control the familiar directly, use Standby mode, he will sight the nearest target itself. Growl will weaken enemies in an area, reducing their damage dealt, while Bite and Run provide mobility and help break the enemy lines. These are abilities you will gain as you progress through your Overseer tree, not just something you get from the actual Mastiff. Next up we have the Cyber-Raven. The Cyber-Raven is, in my opinion, the most powerful of all of them. Now, you need to be a Psyker to use this, and Psykers are already very, very powerful in this game. Now, what can the Raven do? And this is the reason why I think this will make the Raven the most powerful companion in the entire game. Whenever the Overseer uses a non-attacking single target psychic power, except those granting extra turns, boo, on their Cyber-Raven, they are applied to all relevant targets, allies or enemies in a 4-cell radius around it, having no effect on the Cyber-Raven itself. Enemies in a 4-cell radius around Cyber-Raven are under surveillance. And what this means is, the Overseer of Cyber-Raven ignores this creature's cover. Additionally, this creature cannot block the Overseer's attacks using a shield. It's quite good. Now, and this right here is the main thing. Psykers have extremely powerful buffs at their disposal. Typically, they are single target. By having Warp Relay, you essentially can turn all of those single target psychic powers into team-wide buffs. This is very, very strong. Very, very strong. It can, however, become even stronger. And let's see if I can see it here. No, I can't, but I can show it. Give me a second. Let me go back over here. Because of this, the ultimate ability Overcharge. The Cyber-Raven immediately heals to full wounds, even if it has 0 wounds, so it can actually be revived. The Overseer's next 3 abilities cost 1 AP less, that's very powerful. And until the end of combat, the Overseer can relay attacking psychic powers through their Cyber-Raven. So Relay by default cannot be used for attacking powers, but once you use this, it can. So Psykers have extremely high damaging single target spells. This again is gonna make them AoE. That is stupid powerful, just stupid powerful. I'm gonna show it off in a fight in a bit, and that's the reason why I think the Cyber-Raven is gonna be the most useful animal companion out of all of them. I'm kind of biased because I love Psykers, maybe that's why, I don't know. We also have Purification Discharge. The Cyber-Raven deals the Overseer's Psi rating times the familiar's willpower bonus shock damage to the 3 closest enemies in a 4-cell radius around it. Again, if you've played this game before, if you've seen a playthrough of mine of this game in the channel, you will know you can get your Psi rating to very, very high amounts, especially if you're playing with Idira or an unsanctioned Psyker of any kind. So, not only do you have AoE damage via Warp Relay, the actual Raven by itself will also deal AoE damage based on Psi rating and willpower. It's very, very good. The Cyber-Raven is a powerful instrument of transmitting warp energy. Its warp relay ability allows it to enhance the Overseer's psychic powers, spreading their effect to multiple targets at once. If that is not enough, use Complete the Cycle to transmit the most recently relayed psychic power once again. This is one of the available abilities. So, it just keeps on going, man. So, you can use an extremely powerful attack or buff on a relay, and then you can use Complete the Cycle, an ability, to use it again. It's stupid good. It is so good. No cover can hide the Overseer's enemies who are under surveillance if the Cyber-Raven is nearby. Relocate provides with additional mobility. Stabilize is an essential ability for helping allies regain their wounds, while Evil Eye and Purification Discharge are great ways to deal damage to multiple enemies at once. So yeah, the Raven can do a lot. It can kind of negate cover from enemies, it can do a lot of damage, it can buff the entire party, it can give support to allies by giving them some extra wounds and armor, I believe. And it also has AoE abilities for extra damage to people around it. I love the Raven, if it wasn't clear enough already. And then we have finally the Servo-Skull Swarm. Again, need to be an officer or operative for this particular animal companion. They have Extrapolation. Whenever the Overseer uses non-attacking single target abilities except psychic powers, navigator abilities, and those granting extra turns on their Servo-Skull Swarm, they are applied to all relevant targets. Again, this is very, very good. in a force that is around it, having no effect on the Servo-Skull Swarm itself. Now, this is going to be super good on an officer, for example, because you can apply voice of command, you can apply voice of authority, you can apply a bunch of different powerful buffs from the officer in an AoE for the entire party. This is very, very good. I still prefer the Raven because I love Psychers, but this is also very, very good. If the Overseer uses an ability granting an extra turn to an ally in that area, except Finest Hour, the closest ally to the initial target also gains an extra turn. I don't know. I think they're gonna have to balance this stuff out. I think this is... I think these things are way too powerful, honestly. I really do. This is stupid good. Doubling extra turns is gonna be silly. It's just gonna be silly. Description. The Servo-Skull Swarm is a versatile support tool that enhances the Overseer's combat capabilities. Thanks to the persistent extrapolation effect, it can transmit the effect of the Overseer's abilities to multiple targets at once, healing and empowering groups of allies and weakening groups of enemies. Additionally, the Servo-Skull Swarm can influence the course of battle through its signal abilities. Regeneration Signal, again these are abilities here, helps its allies regain wounds. Destruction Signal wreaks havoc among enemy lines, forcing them to attack each other, and Priority Signal distracts the enemy and improves the simula's defense. The Relocation ability provides Servo-Skull Swarm with additional mobility, allowing the Overseer to move it where it is needed most. So, yeah, this is this is gonna be stupid powerful, man. This is gonna be very, very powerful. So yeah, that's it for the familiars. We're gonna take a look at the actual talents and abilities in a bit. But one thing I want to mention as well from this new archetype is, at least speaking from personal experience, there are times where I'm playing with certain companions where I don't really have... how can I say this? I don't really have much use for their second archetypes. I know this might sound a little bit strange, but let's take, for example, Idira, okay? Idira is a Psyker. Heinrichs as well, for example. So Heinrichs or Idira, most of their power comes from them being a Psyker. It doesn't come from them being an operative or a warrior, okay? It comes from them being a Psyker. So a lot of the time, when you are playing with a Psyker, the abilities you pick are not actually going to be abilities from the archetype. They're going to be abilities from the Psyker tree. So, quite often, you take an archetype, but you basically don't even use it, because you're only taking stuff from the Psyker tree. Or Navigator, for example, is another good example. Cassia, I take Grand Strategist for the second archetype, and I basically use nothing from it. I only take Navigator talents, plus the base ability from the Grand Strategist. And that always felt a little bit weird to me, because I typically use Idira as, for example, a bounty hunter, just because I could get some extra turns for buffing purposes with Savor the Kill, or I could go for Executioner with the new DLC, of course, for added damage if you want to go for damage over time effects. Very, very powerful. But the Overseer does open up a new avenue if you want to play with an animal companion and the Cyber-Raven, which I think is going to complement the Psyker very, very well. I think it's going to be a very fun combination to play with an Overseer and those companions, which didn't really have a super obvious second archetype. For an additional example, if you are playing, for example, with Abelard, which is a warrior, you are typically gonna build them as a vanguard or an arch-militant. That's, at least to me, that's what I immediately see him going for, right? It makes sense to build them as a vanguard or an arch-militant. Pascal, on the other hand, as an example again, it's not super obvious what you want to do with the second archetype, right? And having the Overseer now opens up a really cool option for him as well. So I do like the Overseer for a bunch of different aspects, and I do think that this can open up very different types of gameplay because every single animal companion is going to give you a new set of tools. Okay, so with the familiars covered, let's actually look at what the Overseer brings to the table in terms of its own talents. So you see right here, I'm using the new companion as an example to look at the talents on this tree. He has a Cyber-Mastiff because he is an Arbitrator Overseer. And as I said before, the abilities are going to depend on which animal companion you have. So in this case with Cyber-Mastiff, we have Bite, Growl, and Run. But if you look at somebody else, like for example Idira here with Cyber-Raven, it's going to have Complete the Cycle, Evil Eye, and Stabilize. Now, to not make this video go on way too long, I'm going to kind of skip these specific ones. I will just focus on what the Overseer does, generically speaking. So over here we have Armored Hide. Familiar suffers 50% less damage from attacks of opportunity, just making him move around the battlefield a little bit safer. This, you also have specific animal companion talents over here. I am going to be skipping through those, but as an example, Automatic Protection, the protected ally from the Cyber-Mastiff, ignores attacks of opportunity. So, useful stuff. Autonomous Medkit, increase familiar's wounds based on your toughness. This is Cyber-Mastiff, this is Cyber-Mastiff. Brothers in Arms, each ally within a 3-cell radius around the familiar has their resolve increased by 2. This is quite good actually for momentum generation, which is very important. Cyber-Mastiff. Cohesion. The familiar gains 50% dodge against their Overseer's attacks, just making it safer if you want to like burst or shoot a shotgun in the area where the familiar is. Dependable Ally. Whenever a familiar's ability is used on an ally, can be the Overseer, that ally gains a 5 bonus to characteristics considered to be key characteristics of the familiar. So, again, some familiars will have a certain set of characteristics, others will have something different. Like I think the Raven is willpower and agility. This one is probably going to be something different like strength and toughness. Master's Patronage. At the start of the Overseer's turn, the familiar gains 7 temporary wounds. Useful. This is based on the resolve. Cyber-Mastiff. Resistance is futile. Enemies and 3-star radius around the familiar suffer a 5 penalty to characteristics considered to be the familiar's key characteristics. Okay, kind of whatever, but useful. Rite of Calibration. The first use of Overseer ability in combat costs 1 AP less. Resource management is good. Action economy. Rite of Solar Nourishment. The familiar's characteristics are increased by 5. These seem to be kind of just very bland. Side by side. While the Overseer and the familiar are adjacent to each other, both of them re-roll failed dodge attempts once per attack. That's good. Cyber-Mastiff and also Cyber-Mastiff. So the amount of generic talents that they have is not that many. It actually specializes quite well depending on the familiar you are using. Let me actually compare just to make sure I'm not saying something wrong here. Yeah, so Cyber-Raven, 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 and Cyber-Raven. Yeah, so most of what they have is actually specific to their animal companion, and I actually like that very, very much. I was kind of afraid that the talents were going to be just the same for everything, and some companions might not get, you know, as much love as the other ones, depending on what the generic talents would do. So I'm very happy to see that it's custom built for each of the animal companions. Quite cool. With that, let's look, because I don't want to forget to talk about this, let's look at some of the new additions that the game brings, more specifically, the shields. So right here we have an example of this. We have the Radiant Shield. This takes up one slot, of course. It will have a specific shield block chance. In this case, this has 25% block chance. The way this works is very similar to parry and dodge. It's just an additional layer of defense, right? So in the same way you can parry an opponent's attack, you can also block it. In the same way you can dodge an enemy's shot, you can also block it. So the shield works for both melee and ranged. And one additional thing that's not said here, but was mentioned in the notes that Owlcat provided on Steam, is that if you block a shot from a burst attack, let's say an enemy has a burst attack of 10 shots, if you block the first shot, you block all the other shots as well. If you block the 5th shot, you can take any of the initial 5, but the 5th up to 10th shot are all automatically blocked. I'm not sure if they're going to change that, but currently that's the way that the shields work. So you have a variety of them. Let me see how many we have here available. Not that many, but you can see, for example, the Radiant Shield has 25% block chance. This Iron Shield has a 40% block chance. Now, they will also have different abilities, of course. Like, for example, this one here, it also has Shield Bash, which I think all of them do, which is essentially just an attack. So if you are someone that has, let's say, a ranged weapon coupled with a shield, and you want to attack in melee instead of shooting, you can do that. You can just bash somebody with a shield instead of using your ranged weapon. This one, for example, whenever the wielder blocks an attack, the attacker must pass a resistance test or become blinded for 1 round. Useful. It allows to block attacks, and the first use of Shield Bash in a turn costs 0 AP. Quite cool. They also have this Stalwart Defense here. The wielder marks enemies within an area of effect and immediately ends the turn. Until the start of the next turn, the wielder gains plus 15% block against the first attack made by each of the marked enemies. If such an attack is blocked, the wielder counterattacks the corresponding enemy. That's very, very cool. It is somewhat similar to what the Blade Dancer has, but I do like seeing this on the shield as well. But like I was saying, we're going to have different properties. Not all shields will block the same way. That one is 25%, this one is 40%, this one is 20%, but gives you deflection, for example. The Steel Triad, 30%, gives you a couple of extra stuff. I won't go into too much of that. And that's pretty much what we have on this particular save here. So I think the shields are really the main new thing coming to the game in terms of tools of war, as they call them. You might get some new shotguns, be they one-handed or two-handed. You're probably going to have a couple of new shotguns, which is cool, especially if you like shotguns like I do. We're probably going to also have a couple of new power hammers, shock batons and stuff like that, which again are welcomed additions. I like these weapons, and I always felt like we didn't have enough variety of them. So I do like having these additions, but the main thing really is the shield, right? New shotguns aren't going to change the way the game was played up to now, and the same thing can be said for the power hammers. The shields, however, do make things a little bit different. So if we're counting the shields on our characters, we have an additional layer of defense, right? Obvious. A couple of new tools as well, but mainly I'm going to be focusing on the defense here. And enemies can also use shields, and that's really where I think things are going to be more interesting, is the fact that enemies can now also have shields. Now, why do I say this? I say this because this game, if you play it, how do I say this? I don't want to sound arrogant or cocky when I say this. I just want to put the message forward, I guess. If you play this game to a specific skill level, it doesn't require to be a very high skill level. But if you play it with a certain amount of skill, most combats are going to end on turn 1. Of course, it depends on the way you build your characters, it depends on your party composition, it depends on if you have certain abilities from certain archetypes or items. All those things need to be accounted for, obviously. But I just want to say, it is quite easy to come to a point where you pretty much finish every single encounter on the first turn, even if you are playing on unfair difficulty. So when we take that into account, I start thinking, what is the point of having an additional item that's just mainly defensive, right? And the answer in my mind really is for more casual playthroughs, or if you just want to go for something different. Not everybody needs to go for a part that one-shots the entire encounter on turn 1, obviously. You might want to build your party different, you might want to take things slower, you might want to give the enemies a chance. Or, you know, you just play more casually and you want to have a tank in your party and stuff like that. You can do that. And having the shield available to you is a cool thing for that effect. But when I was talking about, you know, being able to finish the encounter on turn 1, I actually am looking forward to seeing how that plays out with enemies having shields. Because I think it might balance a little bit some of the really powerful things certain characters can do, especially if we're thinking about, you know, heavy burst fire weapons like Argenta can do. I don't think it's going to change too much in terms of being able to one-shot the encounter, especially if you are doing it with a Psyker or something like that, which is quite easy to do. The shield does nothing versus spells. But I do think it's an interesting tool to have available, both for the player as well as the enemies. And something that I nearly forgot to mention. You can also see your animal companions in your, you know, your team lineup over here, and they can also equip certain items. Now, they're going to be very specific items, of course, like for example, the Raven only has a single item available. In this case, I have this Black Omen Mark 1. The Cyber-Raven gains 30 willpower and agility and 70% maximum wounds, which is quite decent, of course. And they will also have, you know, their own characteristics, their own level, their own defensive traits like parry and dodge and stuff like that, deflection, armor. And depending on the animal companion, they might have some additional tools also. The Cyber-Mastiff, for example, you can equip it with claws. The Servo-Skull only has the trinket slot, and I believe the Eagle... Oh, the Eagle also has the talons as well, I guess. So, I do believe that the Cyber-Mastiff and the Eagle are the more offensive, or the more physically offensive animal companions, while the Cyber-Raven and the Servo-Skull Swarm are more for support or other types of damaging abilities, like spells. Alright, so let's actually look at an example fight from one of the save files provided. This is a fight happening in a completely new location. This does not exist in the base game. We can even control a Lehman Russ tank for a little while in this fight. Do not mind the positioning too much over here. I'll just go over the lineup just so you know what I'm dealing with here. The main character is an Officer Grand Strategist. Abelard is built as a Warrior Vanguard. They love to build them as a Vanguard. I don't tend to do this. I tend to go a more aggressive route, but in any case, he is a Vanguard with a Shock Baton and also a shield to show off some of the new stuff. Idira is built as an Operative Overseer, which I think is how I'm probably going to build mine in a future playthrough. We can use the Cyber-Raven for this. We have Solomorn, the new companion, again, Soldier Overseer with the Cyber-Mastiff. Cassia in the most powerful combination of Officer and Grand Strategist. And finally, for range DPS, we have Argenta with Soldier and Arch Militant. So let's see what we can do here. We're going to start the fight. I'm not going to bother going for many fancy things here. What I want to do is... I want to give probably some extra... It doesn't matter too much. I'll just do... this here. And I'm going to use Cassia right now, just for the purpose of trying to gather up enemies in a single area, which is how you usually win a lot of fights. Like I mentioned, force movement is very, very powerful in this game. So we'll use Point of Curiosity for that effect. Something like this. Good. I can even put something like Frontline over here for extra damage. And we can buff people further. So I could go for this and that. And that's basically all I need here. Pass the turn. And I can even do this, I guess. Transcend the potential to give Cassia an heroic act. Cassia can give the heroic act to Idira. Idira can now do whatever she wants. And I'm going to try and get some more momentum here because I do want to show off the overcharge ability as well. But the first thing we can do, even without the heroic act, is show off the relay and how it works. So I can use our powerful buffs, which are usually single target like Prescience. By targeting the Raven, it's going to apply to every party member in a 4-cell radius, which is very, very powerful because these buffs are very, very powerful. We can just do this. As we can see, everybody now has Prescience. I can also give everybody Forewarning. Just some very cool abilities. And this might not seem very important, but these buffs affecting everybody in the region is a massive advantage for you and your party in any given fight. So let's go for just generating some momentum here. Yeah, we kill these two guys, we have enough momentum. We can now use our overcharge, which means we can now relay attacking psychic powers as well. And with this, I am going to reposition my Raven. This is how you move him. Go over there. In the middle of all those enemies. And now I can use my very powerful single target blast on my Raven, which will instead affect everybody in the area. Which is quite powerful. Not only that, the Raven also has his other offensive abilities, like for example, Purification Discharge, just deal 70 shock damage to people close by. Killing those two. He actually lived. And we can also do, for example, Evil Eye for more warp damage and perplex. Killing both of them. And now we can even also go for Stabilize, so we can give some temporary wounds to our allies over here and some armor as well. And that's just that's just an extra turn on Idira with an heroic act, of course, but like I said, once you get to a certain point in the game, it's very easy to generate momentum and just get a lot of heroic acts. So you can do a lot of powerful stuff with the Cyber-Raven abilities from the Overseer extra archetype. Now, do I have something to show off the doggy as well? I can't actually pull you guys over here. I can actually. And you guys can come over here. Sure. Get some more momentum, because why not? And I'll give that a turn to Solomon so we can see how the Cyber-Mastiff works.
You should feel honored to witness this.
Okay, so we have our shotgun, which we can just use to blast people away. We even have the Arbitrator's new stuff, which is this double slug. We can use single target blasts on any of them, shooting twice, instead of you having the typical AoE blast. We have our shield, but let's look at the doggy. So we can use our Apprehend, which we saw, which is going to kind of like hound an enemy for a long duration of time. We can just send him over there and have him bite that guy. Chomp. And now, this guy is apprehended. Which means, every time my Overseer makes an attack against him, the doggy is also going to bite. So, let me see if I can show this off by using our double slug as an example. I will shoot him essentially twice. And the doggy... Okay, it counts as a single attack, I guess, but the doggy also attacks. And now, if we want to go for extra stuff, we can say something like, where is it? Bite. So he chomps the enemy. And we can just keep on killing because we still have extra AP. Double blast, killed. And can I show something else here? Maybe not. No, this is just a fight progressing, and yeah, this is where we control the Lehman Rust battle tank, which is quite cool. I can do that as well, I guess. So apprehend this guy now. You dodged, you bitch. It's okay. Let's just blast somebody. Or just show off the apprehend again by going for a shield bash.
The Arbitrator
Bank.
judges.
Oh, I'm learning. So the apprehend only happens if the hit connects. Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, live and learn. Bam. Okay, good enough. We have our Lehman Rust, which I will just use for fun. This doesn't really make a difference for what I wanted to show here, but it's cool. But yeah, I think this is a good example of how you can use your animal companions. We got to see the Cyber-Raven being very effective both for defensive purposes in buffing and supporting our party. Let's not forget we could also have used the single target heals that Psykers have. In this particular build of Idira, she doesn't have Biomancy, but if she had, we could also heal in AoE. So I do think it's a very versatile and very powerful animal companion for to complement a Psyker. I think it's a very good combination. And the Cyber-Mastiff is clearly a more, you know, physically offensive approached companion, which can also be fun to use. But yeah, that was the example I wanted to show. It is a cool mechanic. Alright, so I think I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to showcase for Lex Imperialis in this video, so I will now share my thoughts and give my opinion on this expansion and if I think it is a worthwhile addition to Rogue Trader. Now, I am someone that really likes Rogue Trader. I think it's a terrific CRPG and for me, one of the best games to come out in recent years. I like seeing new DLC content for the game coming out. I like that they are working on the game. I also think that Lex Imperialis is following in the footsteps of what Void Shadows did. And what I mean by this is that sometimes when you get a DLC for games, you get something like a new companion, or you get a bundle of new weapons, or you might get, let's say, a new class, right? But what they did in Void Shadows, and they're also doing here, is you get a complete package. Okay, so you get a new companion, which is built using all of the new stuff. So the new Origin, the new Archetype, he's rocking the new tools of war with the shield and the shotgun. He's showing off the new mechanic of the animal companion familiar in the Cyber-Mastiff. He has his own full quest line with added quests and areas to explore. He has romance, if you like that kind of thing. And we also have a lot of new additions to the actual main game as well, right? So the Overseer archetype you can now use for whatever you want. You can build your companions and your main characters with it if you like it. You have several new animal companions to play with, not just one. I also want to mention that the new tools of war I hope I'm not saying this wrong, but I think the new shields, the new shotguns, and the new power mauls, they will be added to the game regardless of if you have this DLC or not. I do believe this is the case. You will not have the companion, you will not have the Overseer archetype, but the tools of war I think will be added to the game regardless of the DLC. So, in terms of the added Origin and the added Archetype, I like the Arbitrator Origin quite a bit. I think they went above and beyond what I would expect for a new Origin. It's not just another one with a single feature. It's actually something that allows you to build your arbitrators in 3 different ways. So you can focus on range, and you can play around with shotguns, which is really, really cool. You can focus on being a commanding character, more of a support role with like an officer or an operative, by going for another specialization of the arbitrator. Or you can focus on a more melee-centric character, especially on a tanky character with your shields and a bunch of support for that. So those 3 gameplay styles are tied just to the Origin. So I think that's a very solid addition, and you can use that for whatever you want, right? You don't need to use an arbitrator for an Overseer character. You can use it for whatever you want. Do you want to have a soldier arch-militant focused on dual-wielding shotguns? You can do it. And you can get even more power with the arbitrator if you so choose. So that's very cool. And then the Overseer archetype, I do think it's also a very good addition. The fact that you have 4 animal companions to choose from, and they all provide their own specific gameplay, so they can complement different styles of approaches. So if you want to complement a Psyker, you can do it with Cyber-Raven. If you want to complement, let's say, an officer, I think the Servo-Skull Swarm is going to be stupidly powerful. If you just want to have some extra force on the field, the Cyber-Mastiff can do that for you as well. And then the Eagle is also, I think, more of a support / attack role. It's actually my least favorite one, but it's also a cool addition for the game. The fact that you can use the Overseer 2nd tier archetype with any of the tier 1 archetypes also opens up a lot of different possibilities, so I do think it's a well done and welcomed addition to the game. My only it's not even a complaint that I have, but my only real conflicting topic here that I would like to mention is regarding the shields, right? And the support for tanky characters. So first of all, I want to say that I like that we have that. I like being able to make a tank character, somebody more focused on physical defenses. I like that. I think it has a real role in a CRPG, so it's a good thing to have. Getting more support for it from this DLC is a good thing. Be it from the Origin, the Overseer, or even just the new tools of war, with the shield specifically. However, it can feel a little bit, it's not redundant, it's not disappointing that I'm trying to say, but it can feel a little bit useless. But it really depends on the way you play, okay? So I mentioned this before. In this game, you are quite capable of just one-shotting everything in a single round, okay? So when you are able to do that, then the question is, why do you want a tank character? Why do you want more defenses? There's no point. If everything dies on round 1 before they can act, why do you care if you can block enemy attacks? Yeah, so that's my only mention as a not even a negative, but like a conflicting point in this DLC, is that. But again, not everybody plays like that, obviously. But I do know that some people, once you find a way to play the game that's extremely effective and extremely efficient, it's kind of hard to handicap yourself intentionally just for the sake of playing with other toys, like building a tank character. Regardless, it's mostly a nitpick, it's not really a negative. For the most part, I will say, I do think this is a very welcomed addition to the game, and I do think it's a worthwhile addition as well. Again, it's more content to explore in Rogue Trader, that's a good thing. It affects the entire game. It's not just added quests for this guy, it actually changes the main campaign to include different combat encounters. Enemies might now be prepared in a different way, they might have shields, they might have pets, who knows? So it's going to change the dynamic of the entire game as a whole, which is a good thing for me. And like I said, if it is following in the same footsteps as Void Shadows, which it does seem to be, it is a very good thing, because for me personally, this was an excellent addition to the game, and I'm hoping Lex Imperialis is as well. So yeah, that's my opinion on this DLC. Mostly just, it's a welcome addition, it's very positive in my opinion. All the things it brings are good things and fun things to play around with, so I am very much looking forward to actually have the time to go for a full playthrough of the game with the new additions, new quests and new toys to play with. With that, my friends, this is it. I want to thank you all for being here in the channel with me, looking at this review and, just extra information about Lex Imperialis. I hope it was informative and useful. If you have any questions, any suggestions, anything you want to know that I might not have covered in this video, leave a comment below. If you enjoy this content, consider subscribing for more. Many more videos coming out soon. It is also a free and easy way to support the channel. I hope to see you all in some other video, and until then, stay safe, everyone.